Welcome to the Sheckler Spotlight, where creativity meets purpose and conversation goes deeper. Join host Harrison Sheckler as he sits down with inspiring guests from all walks of life, artists, thinkers, musicians, and everyday heroes, to explore the stories that shape us, uplift us, and connect us. Now here's your host, Harrison Sheckler.
Hello, I'm your host, Harrison Sheckler, and welcome to the Sheckler Spotlight. Today, the spotlight is on a distinguished figure in the world of classical music, a pianist, composer, arranger, and educator whose innovative spirit and exceptional artistry have profoundly influenced the musical landscape. You may know him as a prolific performer, celebrated for his interpretations of standard repertoire and his dedication to expanding the piano concerto catalog by commissioning over 25 new works from living composers. Most recently, he received a Grammy nomination for Best Choral Performance for his collaboration as pianist on Jake Runestad's album, A Dream So Bright, choral music of Jake Runestad, featuring the piece Dreams of the Fallen. In celebration of the centennial of George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, he conceived the Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue project, commissioning composer Peter Boyer to create a contemporary companion piece. This initiative has led to performances with orchestras in all 50 states and a recording with the London Symphony Orchestra. Beyond the concert stage, he has embraced technology in innovative ways, notably performing the first ever live classical music recital transmitted over the internet in 1997. As an educator, he has inspired countless students, including myself, during my master's studies. The spotlight is now on you. Jeffrey Biegel, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's so great to see you, and I'm excited for our dialogue today. Let's just start at the beginning. What was music like in your household growing up? How did it begin?
I couldn't hear it. Literally, no, I was born with this hearing impediment, which only became obvious when I was about 3, a little over 3. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't talking. I wasn't hearing well. But the physicians would tell my parents, well, maybe he'll grow out of it. What did they know? It was 1964. I mean, they knew what they knew, but you didn't get hearing tests immediately when you left the hospital like they do with infants now. And so finally they had taken me to another physician, and he would turn me around, or they talked to me. He said, no, this child cannot hear. And they did what's called a surgical myringotomy, which means they go in and poke the eardrum. There was fluid buildup in there. In fact, I was just talking to a conductor friend who has a little child who says he's not talking much, he's not walking much. And I mentioned this situation. He says, you may be onto something because there is fluid that's supposed to get these tubes put in. So the reason why the eardrums were not vibrating was because of the fluid against them, perhaps, or just blocking the ear channel to create this vibration of eardrums to be able to hear. So I had the surgery, and I don't know. I remember it only from the standpoint of, it only came obvious to me later on that this is, wow, there's something to this, floating on the ceiling, watching them do it in a bright white light operating room. And I could see myself on my back with my mouth open. And I just remember seeing 2 doctors over me. And I don't know if that maybe it was an attending and a resident surgeon. I don't know. Whatever. I just remembered that, but I remembered the sensation of floating. It was really weird. It was weird. And then that was it. So call it what you want, out of body experience, or who knows what happened. But I went to the piano and I learned how to play piano just by ear. And fast forward to 7 years old, having first piano lessons, I was in 2nd grade. Teacher taught my oldest sister, Pam. She played piano and very beautifully. She had a beautiful, warm musical touch. My father used to say, if you can only play like she does with such feeling. I told her, it took me decades until I could get to that point. It wasn't what came naturally to me. Me was like playing. I think the reason why I was able to learn how to play quickly is because I was expressing myself that way, not speaking. So musical execution became my language quicker than the English language. And I started lessons at 7. Just John Champre A book, the Green Book, Bone Sweet Bone, the typewriter, which is I think called the computer now. Gosh, no, I guess I should look at the book now, maybe called the smartphone or something. Yeah, the pre-A book, then the A book, red book, the B book, the blue book, the C book, purple, I think. And D was orange, maybe. Then I went to Piano Pieces for Children. AMSCO was the publication. It was grades 1, 2, 3, 4, all these different pieces, and piano pieces for adults. My sister used that. So I went through some of those. Then all 12 Clementi sonatinas, the first 6 of Opus 36, and then the later ones. And that was all within less than 3 years. Hanon, also, the Hanon exercises. I found out later he was French. We've been pronouncing Hanon wrong. I didn't know who he was. His name is Hanon, Hanon, Hanon. It's a French name. Yeah, I wonder if he wrote piano concertos. Should find out more about this guy, except that virtuoso pianist book, So I plowed through all that. Then I went to another teacher who was Morton Estrin. Actually, the first teacher I had was wonderful. He was a head of music for the district in Long Island, Bethpage School District. And he was great. He taught my sister, taught me. And then he sent me to Morton Estrin, who lived in Hicksville, one town over. He taught a lot of people. I found out I remember now Seth Rudetsky, who hosts Sirius Broadway. Seth and I go back to theory classes in Mr. Estrin's Friday night class when we were little kids. He says, "Don't you remember me? I was in the theory class." I said, "Oh my God, yeah. Okay, so you'll remember." That's how we rekindled that friendship. He's brilliant. He's just brilliant. Classical, sent me a video once of him playing the Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody number 11. Played the Mendelssohn Concerto. The guy was brilliant. That's why he sits down, just plays, and he rips apart Broadway shows. He restructures them. The guy's a genius. Everybody loves him. He does a great show. Anyway, so I studied with Mr. Estrin, and I was with him until I was 16. Then I went to play for my grandmother's cousin, Dr. Sonia Slayton Lewis, and we called her cousin Sid. She had a doctorate in musicology from Columbia University. She studied at Juilliard. She was a pupil of Erwin Freundlich and James Friskin, and she could play. Her doctoral dissertation was Schenkerian analysis. Brilliant. She
fun.
analyzed every piece of music she played, which was very interesting. So I played for her twice. Then she finally had me play for Augustin Anievis at Brooklyn. He was at Brooklyn College, and I played for him, and then he sent me to Adele Marcus. I was 16. So I played for Adele, and then she took me on as a student, and she had an assistant. His name was William Kohler. He was fabulous. So he would come out to Long Island and give me lessons, and after a month, I'd play for her. And Adele Marcus was considered, the go-to when you were ready for the finishing touches, but she really taught more than finishing touches and not just technique. I hope the phone a little bit differently. She was really about sound. I mean, nobody had a sound like her. So I was 16 and I started with her, and she was tough. I mean, everybody who's heard her name was like, "Oh, how'd you get through that?" And she was tough, and she would just really lay it on thick as much as she needed to get you to do what she felt she needed to do at the piano. Really, not only how to play the piano, but how to be a musician. And then what does it require to have a career at it? Oh, that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
So she had her hands into contemporary music. She learned Stravinsky's Capriccio and played it in the United States. And she met Stravinsky, and she said he was such a stickler for a 30-second note rest. I mean, the rhythm was a big deal. So I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot about life. I learned a lot, little lines like, don't just Don't just look at it, but see it. Don't just hear it, but listen. Things like that. Play from the inside out, not the outside in. Don't manufacture what you're doing. But a lot of things that I learned from her, I took several steps further. But then I entered some competitions. I went to Juilliard, did the bachelor's and master's and all the doctoral credits and everything. That's another story. I ended up with an honorary doctorate with all the applied credits from Moravian University. Whatever. It's had good chamber music at Juilliard with Felix Gallimere. And I've always loved choral music. So choral music my voice is terrible. I was never a great chorister, but I loved the music so much that I wrote choral music. I've composed several pieces that are still performed and published by Hal Leonard and Carl Fisher, whatever, but they get performed. Mostly the Hanukkah Fantasy gets performed because there's so little for Hanukkah, but it's performed for choir and piano or with orchestra. So they're still getting calls for that. But I've learned to apply my choral psyche to the piano. I treat the piano more as a choral instrument than even an orchestral instrument. And the thing that I learned from Adele Marcus the most was how to sing, how to get the instrument to sing. And I look at the piano as a harp, not as a percussion instrument. So it's how to make the strings vibrate as a violinist would. Only we have a different way to get to the strings, whereas string players can use a bow. We have to get through from our fingers to the keys to the strings. Not an easy thing to do. And we have spaces between our fingers and spaces between the keys. So I always say the way to seal those spaces between your fingers and between the keys is to sing out loud when you practice. That's, to me, the biggest deal. I think Chopin even said that. And the more you sing, Adele did that. Her father was a rabbinical cantor, and she would sing very softly like a cantor when she taught. And that's how she got that sound. You know, cantorial singing is it's a fatty sound. It's like a good steak, you know, it's not lean. It's got a little bit of fat in it, which juices up the sound a lot. And that's how she played. So I teach, my mantras are, you know, sing what you see and play what you sing. Sing out loud when you practice. The fingers follow the voice. Your fingers follow your voice. You can write a song. Your fingers follow your voice. Your fingers follow your voice. Follow, you know. It's true. And the more I do that, over the years, my own sound became my own. You know, we always tried to imitate Adele Marcus. Everybody tried to imitate her, everything. But I also played a lot for ballet school when I was younger. My mom used to drive me to ballet classes all the time. And I would play for the ballet schools. I wasn't ready to drive yet. I made a little money, but it also loosened me up because it loosened the wrist just watching them. Loosened me up, and I learned how to play musically for dance that way. And my father was actually the youngest captain in the New York City Police Department, the NYPD, and he loved music, loved Rhapsody in Blue. Took him decades until he finally said, "You got it." You know, he used to think I played it too seriously, but loved music. I remember once he made a set of chimes for me. He went back to college in the 70s when he was a captain of one of the big precincts in New York. And he went at night to Queens College and he got his bachelor's degree in political science and he minored in music. I think his teacher was Joe Mackless. You know, that name wouldn't ring a bell except to people who knew who Joseph Mackless was, who wrote music books that they used in college. And he made a set of chimes for me that I took to my 6th grade class and played. It was really kind of cool. He was wanted to be a lawyer, then he wanted to be a shop teacher, and he became a police officer. But as a shop teacher, he knew how to cut the pipes and make them exactly in a scale sound. It was great. So it's an interesting background. It's different. But I think the trigger point of the new music was when I was 12, when Morton Estrin handed me a fresh copy of a new sonata, 1973, by Meyer Kupferman. And it was called Sonata Mysticos. It's on my website, actually, a performance I did of that when I was a teenager, maybe 13 or 16. I don't remember which one it was, but we put it on my website. Great new piece. I got to play it for Meyer Kupferman. I went to New York City and played it for him. And getting the feedback from a composer was a big deal. Those were the seeds planted for the future. So that's the background.
So when a student is, let's say they're in high school and they are looking at colleges and who they want to study with, what would you say your recommendation for when they're looking for specifically piano programs and who to study with? What's your advice to them?
There's so many variables. Uh, I would actually ask them questions outside of the piano. What are your interests? Um, do you play other instruments? Are you a singer? Are you an instrumentalist? Do you like band? Do you like orchestra? Do you like teaching? Or do you want to be a music teacher? You want to get a music ed degree and play piano on the side? Uh, Almost any way to talk them out of wanting to have a career as a soloist, because that's just a difficult path. That's just like follow your yellow brick road, I say to everybody, but that's like the yellow brick road going into the forest,
Mm,
and you're trying to make sure that you don't get eaten up alive by a bear. Or who are you going to meet on the way? It's a very difficult business. It's not just a profession, it's a business.
hmm
And I remember when I was younger, one of the presidents of one of the big managements said, make friends in the business, make friends, play chamber music, make friends in the business. And even Adele Marcus told somebody once, about me, well, Jeffrey, he just doesn't, he has to make himself feel felt. The world isn't going to come clamoring at his feet to give him work and play. It just doesn't work. You could be the best at what you do, but without the business sense, uh, or a gimmick, there are gimmicks. There's gimmicks out there. So people raking it in with gimmicks, whether it's what they dress like, or if they play fast, or whatever it may be, or showy, look what I could do. Uh, I don't know how long that lasts until that wears off, and then they're like, okay, what do you really got?
mm,
It's it's also what Maya Angelou said: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But you never really know who you are until you evolve into that person. Um, you could be very shy and withheld and quiet when you're younger. It takes you years until you get comfortable within yourself to be able to open up. And that doesn't mean you have to run to the nearest psychiatrist to find out what's wrong with me. Sometimes you just have to let nature take its course. People don't change. That's another thing that Adele Marcus said to me. Like I said, well, I know what you're talking about. It'll change. Just, dear, people don't change. They just reveal themselves.
mm-hmm.
What a line. What a line. And it's very true, because you can't really change who you are. You can evolve into who you are. When people show you who they are, believe them. But who are they? I mean, sometimes they're not fully showing who they are because they're shy about it, or they're not quite there showing you who they are. And sometimes you don't really know who you are until you live your life. I remember Adele Marcus would play, and I'd say, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I said, I wish I could do that. She says, dear, there's no substitution for living.
Mm-hmm.
I think what she meant is, as you live your life, it will come to your fingers. I had a piano technician, Steve Burrell. He used to be head of concert artists at Steinway. Then he moved over to Baldwin before he retired. And he used to tune for the recording sessions for Glenn Gould and Arthur Rubinstein.
Oh, wow.
But Steve was like an uncle to me. He was a fabulous guy, humble, sweet, kind. He flew out to Erie, Pennsylvania once to fix the piano. That was a disaster. I was playing my tryout recital of a New York debut 2 days before it, and he came out and fixed the piano. And then we drove back. He helped me find the piano I have now in the Steinway dealer in New Jersey, and he was just a great guy. But he said to me, it's interesting. The keyboard is like a mirror. I didn't know what he was talking about. He says, it reflects everything about the person playing. He used to tune pianos in the apartment of Donald Henahan, who was in the mid 80s, the chief music critic of the New York Times. He had taken over for Harold Schoenberg. And I found out after the fact, thank God I didn't know what I was playing, that he was there. As they say, Donald Hanahan. Oh my gosh, he rips right into you. His critics, his reviews. So I didn't know he was there. I found out after the fact that he came to review the concert. I said, oh my gosh. And the review came out the next morning. This is a Monday night recital in Alice Tully Hall. Review came out the next morning. I was like, oh, and it was really beautiful. I was so grateful. I was relieved. But it turned out that Steve Burrell, my piano tech, tuned Donald Hanahan's pianos and told him before the recital, you really ought to go hear this young man. I think you really should go hear him. And he went. He listened to Steve and he went. That's a great story. I mean, looking back now, that's a great story. I mean, my piano tutor told the chief music critic of the Times to go hear my recital, and he reviewed it, and it came out the next day. It's a fairy tale, but it helped. I mean, it helped launch a career, but then it took years really until anything stuck, because who did I know? I won some competitions. I knew a couple of people. I didn't know conductors. I didn't know any of the administrators. Managers were really wanting to sell you if you were a known commodity, like, oh, everybody uses that brand toothpaste. Okay, we'll take it on and we'll sell it. We'll promote it. But they really didn't know me. And just, winning a couple of big competitions didn't really, it was in its own world. It wasn't really part of who's who and who gets what, the dates to play and building repertoire. I had a lot of concertos by then, but so that was the beginning then of starting over. So, and then I started to buy Musical America books and before internet, and I would cold call conductors at home, getting their phone numbers through information. A lot of them. Was that unorthodox? You bet. What else was I going to do? Wait for the phone to ring to get work? I know. And then you get your teacher in the background saying, Jeffrey needs to make himself feel felt. They're not just going to come to his door. I thought, well, then I better get out there like a full of brush door-to-door salesman and sell my wares. What do I have? Well, I had some competition wins. I had some repertoire. I had pieces that nobody else played, a few different things. But then came the Leroy Anderson concerto I learned, and Lalo Schifrin's concerto, and later on a few other pieces that helped me break down the doors a little bit with something that nobody else had. So then we move on further to the world of commissioning, which now I have 31 projects.
You're up to 31. Wow. Well, let's dive into that. Let's start with some of the more recent projects that you're working on. I mean, one of the big ones is the Red, White, and Blue project with Peter Boyer. How did that come to be?
Well, it was around 2017. I wanted to do something for Rhapsody and Blue Centennial, which wouldn't be till 2024. It's just 7 years. And then by November of 2019, I thought, let me really hone in on this. And I started thinking, well, instead of just Rhapsody and Blue, how about a new piece? Let's commission a new work with a different title to celebrate the centennial by a living composer. I went to some composers and they all said no. Then I went to Peter Boyer and he said no. He said no. And he said, I don't want to be compared to Gershwin. I said, well, okay. People will compare no matter what. But how about the story of when George Gershwin played for Maurice Ravel in Paris? And he said, I want to learn from you about orchestrating. I want to write like you. And Maurice Ravel said, I hear you make a lot of money as a composer. Tell me, Mr. Gershwin, if I may ask, how much money did you make last year for your work? And he told him, and he says, he looked at him and said, I think I should be studying with you. And that's what Ravel said to Gershwin. You're so much more successful than me monetarily. But he said, Mr. Gershwin, better you should be a first-rate Gershwin than a second-rate Ravel. I said, Peter, how about this? Better to be a first-rate Boyer than a second-rate Gershwin.
I love that.
That did it. Basically, he let that marinate a little bit, and he decided to do it. He says, what should we call it? I said, there's only one title I've come up with because everything else just doesn't work. Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. Not only celebrating Gershwin, but celebrating America. And then COVID hit. I decided I cannot ask orchestras to commission this. So I started raising money. Finally, it took a while, raised all the money for Peter's fee and the copying costs. And I decided to resurrect a project that I started in 2000. After this Willick project, the Ellen Taves Willick Millennium Fantasy Project, I had 27 orchestras in that. And that was the largest consortium of orchestras put together for a new piece, certainly for a piano concerto as well. And I decided, okay, I have 25 states, 27 orchestras. Let's just blow the bundle, go for all 50 states. So I created, actually, as Donald Pippin, music director of Radio City Music Hall, Pops conductor, Broadway conductor, and we had worked together. I asked him, who should I ask? He said, why don't you ask Charles Strauss? He was a pupil of Aaron Copland and Arthur Berger and Roger Boulanger. Maybe he'll write your piano concerto, because he had written one in the 50s before he wrote Bye Bye Birdie and Annie and all the great shows. So I raised his money. Charles agreed, and we called it Concerto America. I call it the Concerto America Project, first 50-state project without buy-ins from orchestra, meaning orchestras don't have to pay for it. And then I had the Boston Pop set for the premiere in June of 2002 and the Honolulu Symphony after a 9/11 hit. Mm-hmm. So with 9/11, I decided bad timing. I put the project on the shelf, but I performed it those 2 times. Good piece. And during COVID, I thought, let's resurrect the 50-state project. So it's the first 50-state project without buy-ins from orchestras, meaning they don't pay toward the composer's fee. I raised the money for that. And it's the first 50-state project for a new work for any instrumental soloist or vocal soloist in orchestra. And I didn't really call it that until I started to see that 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 orchestras were on board. I said, let's go for the 50. And it was challenging. It was tough. There was a lot of pestering, a lot of diligence, and being annoying to get this job done. But, you know, when you're doing a campaign, you have to pull out all the stops. Yeah, sure, people's feathers are going to get ruffled. But when they see that it's not about me, and it's not even about Peter, it became part of bringing the country together, not politically, and it's still not politically. It was pulling the country together post-COVID, hoping we all survive. Be able to get people to make music again with a brand new piece celebrating being alive, being American, and Rhapsody in Blue. And that's what happened. Then Peter came up with a great idea. He said, how about if we record it with the London Symphony? I said, who's paying for it? He says, I don't know. You seem to be resourceful. I said, thanks. Well, one foundation paid for the whole recording, and we got it out in time for the centennial month of Rhapsody in Blue. It's great. And they were good. Peter conducted it. I mean, he's terrific. So all 50 states, we have 58 orchestras. I wanted it to be endorsed by people. So I have 47. There'll be about 3 or 4 more coming. Endorsements for the project to show, it was really for the future, for people to look back and see people who supported this initiative, not only just musically, but actors, managers, artists, orchestra representatives, conductors. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some really nice names on the endorsement list, and I wanted it to be something special for everybody. And I get to play it, of course, and I hear something different every time I play it. It's so cool because every piano is different. The audiences really do go crazy because it hits on their soul in a way that many pieces have not, except that we're older pieces, but it's a new piece that they hear. They've never heard it before, and it really just hits them. It really gets them. And, you know, I want in 50 years for people to look back to see that list of orchestras that came through to band together to celebrate the American Symphony Orchestra, what that is. And there's been resistance too, which I'm like, why? I mean, this is a win-win. You're doing this you're doing it for your community. This is not about the man or woman on the podium or the orchestra or me or the composer. It's for the community. It's more for the future. very important to have new music for future generations to perform, because you need them. I mean, we were spoiled. I mean, we could just say, yeah, I play Prokofiev, 3 Saint-Saëns, 2 Grieg, Liszt, Beethoven, Mozart, Schumann, Brahms, Chopin. Wow, Gershwin, Shostakovich, whatever. We're lucky. So I wanted to at least do that, not just because I want to leave a legacy. You can't think that way. Your legacy becomes what you evolve into.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't write it down on a piece of paper. This is what I want to do. When people say, what's your 10-year goal? You don't know, because you're going to meet different people along the way. I mean, did Dorothy know that she was going to get back to Kansas because of the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion? No, she had to meet them first to carve her future. So I just think you have to live one day at a time and go where life takes you. So, you can't really have a 10-year plan, although you have to be realistic, but things don't always happen the way you think they will. In fact, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. And what we become, it's like the game of telephone. What the person says in the beginning ends up being something totally different by the 10th person, because of it gets changed. People change words, different things change it. It turns into something else. And it's not what that first person said. So looking back, I knew nothing back then of what would happen 30, 40, 50 years later. Nothing.
So where's the project now? How many performances have you had of the concerto, and how many do you have coming up?
It's been over 40 performances.
Oh, wow. You are seeing the United States.
Really seeing the people. Basically, everybody has the same goals, to be able to put food on their table. And you get to some areas where there's more concentration on family, and other places there's more concentration on single life careers. But music means basically the same to everybody. It just reaches them in a certain way. And this kind of piece really does reach everybody. So we still have a good dozen or more states left. It's going to be going 25, 26 season and 26, 27. So all the orchestras in the project, and even the ones that decide next week, next month, next year, that want to do it in the 26, 27 season, they still can. As long as they program it before the end of the 26, 27 season, they'll be listed in what has become a historic roster.
It is historic. Mm-hmm.
It is. I mean, it is. It's the first 50-state project for a work for instrumental or vocal soloist and orchestra. It's also the first 50-state project for orchestras without the buy-ins, which is a big deal, because usually you have to pay a fee or the composer's fee to be considered a co-commissioner. They call it a share fee or a buy-in, whatever. So that's the Rhapsody project. On the bookend, opposite from the Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue Centennial in 24, is America at 250 in 2026. So that'll seal that project. The other ones are James Lee III, who's resident composer of Baltimore Symphony now. He wrote a concerto called Concerto in A. I said to him, I want concerto in something to commemorate the centennial of Gershwin's Concerto in F, which is this year. So the premiere will be with the Louisiana Philharmonic in October with Matthew.
Fantastic.
And there'll be some more performances of it. I know Andre Raffel wants to do it in Hudson Valley Symphony, and Dirk Meyer would like to bring it to Augusta, Georgia, and possibly record it. And 2 other projects that are already funded. One is Daniel Pertu, who wrote The Planet's Fantasy for me. He's fabulous. Planet's Odyssey, actually, it's called. And he is going to write, I gave him an idea to do a new Carnival of the Animals.
Ah, that's fantastic. That's so exciting.
Different animals. And I didn't know what to call it, but I was listening to the Ogden Nash poems and reading them, and the title came right out at me, and I got some written permissions from the publishers who own the estate of Ogden Nash, or run it at least, and they said you could use this title, Animali Carnivali.
I like
in
that.
The finale, when he says, and now we come to the grand finale, Animali Carnivali, and that's Ogden Nash's poems. So we'll probably have poems written. There's some people we're talking to about who would recite when they're done. And it'll just be different animals. So right now I'm looking for the orchestras to step up to the plate to be number one and then following. The other is a project that I just came out of left field. Stuart Goodyear, wonderful pianist, Canadian pianist. He says, "Can I write a concerto for you?" I said, "You're a pianist. Why do you want to write one for me?" He says, "No, I want to write it for you." I said, "Okay." So we talked about ideas, and I said, "I have an idea that's been sitting in my head. Another remake of a classic, and not Carnival of the Animals this time, pictures at an exhibition."
Oh, Mussorgsky. Okay.
Okay. How about visions at an exhibition?
Mm.
Don't limit yourself to paintings. You could do painting, sculpture. It could be glass art of the 21st century. The Corning Museum of Glass has some incredible examples of that. So he says, that gives me something to work on. So I've been busy writing to over 150 conductors and orchestras for that. Most leaning on Canadian orchestras
Really?
because he's, yeah. So there may be a chance with a few there. So this is all 26, 27, those two projects. And yeah,
How do you, I
just,
mean, do you sleep?
yeah. But
Yeah.
it's, I love playing classics. So I'll play a recital at Brooklyn College, just Bach, Beethoven, Chopin.
Hmm.
And working with all the living composers really helped me tremendously with playing the standards by non-living composers. You just see them differently. You see them as people.
Well, I think that was an
And
interesting point when my relationship with you as a student, you would talk about the importance of listening to not just classical music, but music that's around us. And you talked how it informed the way you interpreted pieces differently. Um, if you could speak on that, I would love to hear that.
I think that to interpret music of the past, it's really good to know people who write music in the present and feel them as living, breathing composers.
Hmm.
And what makes them create the music that they do could be where they live, could be their background, it could be the city, it could be what's happening in the world. I mean, most music is written based on what was happening at the time. And it just makes you feel differently about the pulse of the music as it relates to the heart. I've learned a lot about that, about how to get pulse in playing from the heartbeat, because you can't play faster than a person can breathe to, and how the weak beats really teach us a lot about how to get pulse one and two and three and four and mm, mm, mm. And you have to be able to feel the weak beats the same as you do the downbeats. And the weak beats are what create the forward direction, not the downbeats. And singing, of course. But knowing living composers is important, not only limited to the style of music that you think you'll play, but Mozart was like a pop music writer during his time. Some of those lighthearted, different things that he wrote. Uh, it's good to, I mean, songwriters today, or 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, were writing melodies. Schubert wrote melodies, Chopin wrote melodies, uh, Broadway show writers write melodies, songs. Gershwin wrote songs, Cole Porter. So you find the songwriters, listen to their music, and just feel the line, feel the direction of the music. Tell a story. How does this piece tell a story? And that to me is important in musical development, not just listening to recordings of symphonies, but playing for singers, playing for dance. Get to know composers. Try to write your own. Write a little of your own. Just see how difficult it really is to do. Now, to some, it comes easier than others, but I think it's important to be able to have a little handle on each component that feeds into how you'll interpret even the standard piece that everyone knows. I also try to strip everything I know or have heard about a piece so that when I go and play it, I approach it very freshly. with new pair of ears, new pair of eyes, just a fresh heart instead of like, I've heard it played that way, you get used to it. And sometimes you get used to just are bad habits too.
Mm-hmm.
And then you prevent yourself from playing something spontaneously. So
So would
do
you
all your
recommend to students not to, when they're learning a new piece, to not necessarily go listen to a bunch of recordings of it, or and just like start what's on the page first, and then maybe listen to recordings?
depends on the person. If you listen to a recording sometimes too soon, you get scared.
Mm,
Oh, I can't. How am I going to do that? Oh my gosh, no. It's good to familiarize yourself with something. If you've heard it before, then you've heard it. If it's a new piece you never heard, familiarize yourself with it. Just look at it and see what it's. Go to the instrument. Just try to play. I keep moving the phone around, so I'm holding it. Read through things. Just read through. The more you read through music, your reading ability improves. Um, Everybody's different, and you can't do anything too difficult. Don't take on a challenge that's really way out there, because then you get discouraged over time if you can't reach certain short-term goals. But you build up to it.
well, and I think it's important. A lot of students, uh, you have to, like you mentioned, you have to find your own voice and what music speaks to you. And not everyone's going to be a master at Beethoven sonatas, but they may be really great at playing some Gershwin. And it's finding your own voice. And I think that's one thing that we have to encourage with our students. What speaks to you, and what can you portray to the audience that will speak to them?
Exactly. Uh, I mean, usually in a early development program or process or college even, you have to be able to play certain repertoire that they call meat and potatoes. You have a little of this, a little of that, but where you gravitate to over time is not always what you do in school. Comes later.
Hmm. Life lessons.
Yeah, essentially.
There, a quote just came up. You were talking about the importance of having memorable melodies. Um, David Foster, someone who you're very well acquainted with, he talks about something that sets you apart is being able to write a really memorable melody. Um, what is your relationship with David Foster? And you've had so many amazing people that you've met throughout your career, along this fabulous journey with the collaborations, and we'll talk about a recent Grammy nomination that you had too, with some great figures.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote some songs, and then I got to know Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because he wrote a piano concerto. So he had publications at Theodore Presser. They were handling the piano concerto. Uh, Told me about it. I didn't know. It was Danny Dorff ran it at Presser. Danny's a wonderful composer, wrote a concerto for me too. It's really good. And I said, I don't know the Emersons. He sent it to me. I said, this is really good. Why didn't I know it? 1977. So I learned it, and I faxed the message to Keith, and then eventually led to email, and became very good friends. And I recorded the piano concerto in like 2015 or so. I think that's the only other recording of it to date, other than Keith's own in the Emerson, Lake and Palmer album called Works with the London Philharmonic. And I asked Keith, what do I do with these songs? He says, I don't know what to tell you. I think you got to get to David Foster. It's like to get into the Wizard of Oz. I mean,
Yeah.
and so I looked it up. But back then, even turn of the century, had emails, and you could look up websites on the internet. I found him through Atlantic Records, and I contacted them there. They sent me here. They sent me there. Finally ended up in his office because he was working for Atlantic Records. And then I got to his assistant at the office where he lived at that time. And I sent my the song, faxed everything, and I sent a link to hear me play the first internet concert that I did in '97 from Steinway Hall in New York. And I came home from somewhere, and I put the voice machine on and said, hey, this is David Foster. I hope I get this. Is Jeffrey Biegel. If I did, call me. Gave me his number. So I was like, what? So I called. And he says, "Yeah, no, I like your songs. They're great. They don't do it for me, but they're good. They're good. Keep writing." He was very brutally honest, and I accepted that because I studied with Adele Marcus. So after that, anything was just nice. Like, okay. Um, he says, "But if you're that playing the classicals, let me know. I don't know if I could do anything for you, probably not. But when you're out here, just let me know. Come by." So I did. Finally, I was going out there to do some recordings for Piano Disc in Sacramento, and flew down and was met by the airport by his assistant and drove me to the house. And whoa, I played Chopin G minor ballade for him. He said,
Oh,
"Play some
wow.
Chopin." I said, "Play some Chopin." His phone kept ringing, but he didn't pick it up. To me, that was a sign of greatness.
Mm.
He didn't pick up his phone because he was so engulfed in Chopin. Not so much me playing, but go. It's like I finished. He's like, "I don't know how you do it." And I can't. I wish I could do that. I said, "Yeah, well, wish I could write your song." But that's how we became friends. It was this incredible mutual respect, and I mean, he's got a good pair of ears. And if something's not good, he'll tell you. I don't know. I was doing something once. He says, "Yeah, it was good. It was good. Piano's really out of tune." I was like, "Yeah, I know." But, and he wrote those pieces 11, like you played them.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed them. He says, "Oh, you could sight read those." I said, "Oh, whatever." And I really liked them. Some of them were a little tough, as you know, but that's the friendship. And back even then, I said, "You should write a piano concerto for me." He's like, "I'm not there yet." But he didn't, not yet. Maybe he will. Who knows?
Hopefully,
Right
that'd
now,
be great.
right now, I mean, back then he's like, "I want to get a show on Broadway." Well, finally, Boop the musical is on Broadway, from the
Mm-hmm.
Chicago years to that. That's what he worked years on that. And COVID slowed that down. He finally got the show on Broadway. He's got his Broadway show. Is he going to win a Tony? Yeah, probably going to win multiple. I mean, he's just so gifted. He's just so gifted. And he's so respected. So, that's the friendship there. I mean, it's not a classical guy, but he started classically. So he respects what I do, and I respect what he does, and that's what makes it work. And he's great. He's just, I mean, if you watch The Hitman, you watch the Netflix show, yeah, he looks like a tough guy trying to get the best out of people he can. But that's his job.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows what he can get. He knows what he needs to do to make it work. And, remember that? I think I said that to you. I said it to somebody. I said, "God, I'd never forget that thing, David." Said, "That's your money note. That's the
Yes.
money note. You got to go. You got to. That's the note. That's the one you got to hold." So I learned from him things like that. Not that you're doing it because it's effective, but because it means something,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important. Not just to say, "Well, I'm going to wait here because it's effective." It has to be musically what you feel so
Mm-hmm.
deeply that you're compelled to do that. I got to do that there and you may not do it all the time. And then in 10 years later, you may not do it at all because it's lost its whatever. But that's what I learned, is this being the best musical version of yourself that you possibly can. It can't be just good. It has to be great. The enemy of great is good. I love that line. That's his line.
Mm-hmm.
Great
It's
person.
amazing where life takes us and the people that come into our lives and the relationships we build. And it's important to be open to all these different people and their backgrounds and what they have to offer. Because we're
Absolutely.
in this journey of life together, and it's an exciting ride.
It
Um,
is, and when you start realizing that you're on the roller coaster with other people on it too.
yeah, you're not alone.
No, and when the roller coaster goes up, they're going up with you too. When it goes down, they're with you too. So this infighting or fighting against each other is like counterproductive. It's like they ain't going to get anywhere doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and despite the challenges, despite the challenges of the world around us, the music still has to reflect and define us as people first. As Adele Marcus would say, first you're a musician, then you're a pianist. First you're a person. It's like I tell my kids, I don't care what you do, you have to be a person first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what people tend to forget is they become overcome by what's in their pocket monetarily, or they forget the core focus of who they are and why and what they could be. That actually prohibits you from becoming more of who you could be because you're letting outside things take over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's dangerous. But being centered and being humble and just working with people around you is really what helps you and everyone move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what you were talking about, how the piano reflects um, the pianist, and through your music, you see this warmth and openness. This is what I get from your piano playing. I hear this warmth and openness, and just this deep connection with music, and that you want to portray that community with the world. You really bring people in, and it's very inspiring for me as, one of your former students. I can only hope that one day, the things and the project I pursue and the music I pursue has that same impact. And I see that impact with all your different projects and the relationships you have. You're a very genuine person. And so thank you for that and being a huge inspiration
Oh,
to me.
very sweet.
It
I
means a lot.
Well, look at what you did orchestrating the pieces I wrote, the three reflections
Oh,
of
yes.
justice
Yeah, that was an
and
honor.
equality. But you did it. I couldn't do it, but you could. I couldn't. And when you came to Dallas when we did the reflection of justice, and they took you in so warmly, and Kim, of course, Kim Notemi, she's not only was the CEO of Dallas Symphony, she's now the CEO of the LA Phil. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is a very she is a very gifted person
Mm-hmm.
in the way she cares about people and what she's doing. And if you send her an email, she responds. There's just no crazy ego stuff going on. You'd be surprised. So many things I'll send out to people, she'll respond. Other people that respond, I know who they are, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot who don't. And they say, sometimes you just can't break through because it's like they either got it or they don't. And you either push people away because they think you're aggressive or you whatever. They don't realize the selflessness behind it. Few do. She gets it. She understands that. People do get it. And you just have to keep those people in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you don't need a lot of friends, but you need enough to be able to get your message out there. But you did great. I mean, you're a very genuine, warm, open, honest, life-serving person. You're not into just yourself. You see yourself as part of a bigger picture, and
Thank you.
how you could serve not just the community, but how you could serve the purpose and mission of others to the best of your capacity. That's important. Many people never ever get to that point because they don't even know what that means. But you do. So, you don't know in 10 years where you'll be. Who knows? I mean, some people end up conducting the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, or, I
That'd
mean,
be pretty cool.
you don't know. I mean, you could be writing more music. You could be, who knows? The sky's the limit, but you're open to it
Mm-hmm.
and you get it. You just get it. The people who get it and the people who don't. It's just the way it is. Uh, and some people could be put off by it. Some people could be offended by it. Some people can get annoyed by it. They could feel pressured, and they just push it away or they ignore it because they don't really understand where it's coming from and why.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know. So, and I think that's important. Always know thyself and always follow your core, your gut. That's
Mm-hmm.
important.
You've
So
given
I've
a
seen you
lot of
grow. You know,
Yeah, you've given a lot of great advice, and I hope a lot of people who listen to this, take it to heart. you've created your own path, like we've been talking about. You've really had to put yourself out there and create your own path in music and the arts. What would you say your advice to, I mean, you've already given a lot of advice on it, but what would you say your advice to students in today's world or just musicians in today's world? What do they need to do, um, I guess, to make their voice heard?
Look, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media. We didn't have email. Wow. Very
Hmm.
lucky today. Just make your voice heard, make friends. Just make friends. Over time, you'll know who your friends are and who your friends aren't.
Hmm.
And just always stick true to what you feel and what do you have to offer for the betterment of others. Don't just do it for your own anything. It's really nobody cares,
Hmm.
but something where it makes a difference for other people, because in the future they'll look back on that and say, yeah, that applies to now. But making friends is important, and sticking with people who share your values and who want to make a difference. And when you combine those forces together, you can really do interesting things.
It's true.
And
It's true.
don't give up. Don't give up. Some of the things you work the hardest for that don't happen, they don't. Some of the things you work less for do. It's just what it is. Whatever's supposed to be will be.
Hmm. One thing I do want to touch on, but we're coming close to the end of our podcast, but I do want to mention your recent Grammy nomination, um, with Jake Runestad, another person that you collaborated with. And I was so honored because during the recording process, I was your page turner. And so I got to be surrounded by the orchestra and hear it in the process, which was which was really exciting. But talk a
That's
little bit
nice.
about that.
I got to use this hand somehow without doing it. Well, anyway, let me do this. So, yeah, Jake came to me 2011, was on the at the stage of Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis. I was doing the William Bokeham's Prometheus for piano,
Mm,
orchestra, and chorus, one of the projects I commissioned. And he says, I'm Jake Runestad. I'm a composer. I live in Minneapolis. I studied with what's his the composer. Oh, boy, I'm drawing a blank. There's a really Kevin Poots. I'm sorry.
mm-hmm.
I forget. And he was working with Libby Larson on the side too. So we went for lunch. So we're eating lunch, and I just look at him, and he says, "Everything okay?" I said, "I don't know why I'm saying this, but I think you're my next composer." He says, "What does that mean?" So I said, "You write for piano, you write for chorus, you write for orchestra." He says, "I do all three." I said, "How about a piece for piano, orchestra, and chorus? Commissioned. I'll raise the money, get whatever orchestra's involved." He said, "Oh, wow." He's 25. He was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up within a month that he came up with Dreams of the Fallen. He said the poems of Brian Turner are very powerful. And a lot of people I know come back from the war. A lot of people don't. And got to tell their story and to get some closure when they come back, to become part of community, because they've fallen from the community they once knew. So they were the fallen, not dead, but fallen from the life they once knew, where they came from. And the dreams were by the poems of Brian Turner, who was an Iraq War veteran. And it's a powerful piece. He took poems from the books that Brian wrote, and he turned them into the choral part. And then I became the soldier, the returning veteran, recalling the life at war, before, during, and after. And we finally ended up recording it with True Concord Voices and Orchestra in Tucson with Eric Holton,
Or
Kentucky.
in Phoenix. Or
And
wait, did you
we
recorded in
no, we
Phoenix?
recorded it in Phoenix, but we
Yep.
rehearsed it in Tucson.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up being, went out down from over a couple of hundred entries for Grammys for that category to the top five. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that's the win. That's the win. Once you get to the top five, that's it. I mean, if you win the Grammy, that's like, well, we put a quarter in the slot machine and bing, everything went off. You won. You
Exactly.
won the
You're in the realm,
well,
that level. Yeah.
I think that's important. The other recording that did get the Grammy for the best classical compendium was
Hmm.
Kenneth Field's piano concerto based on the Helen Frankenthaler
Hmm.
paintings. Spiritualist, that was with London Symphony and Joanne Filletta conducting, very old friend of mine, but almost 40 years. So that won that year, which was really a wonderful piano concerto. Kenneth Fuchs is a fabulous composer, wonderful American composer. There's so many. I'm very grateful and blessed to have earned the trust of these composers to not only have them write these pieces for me, but giving me the trust to raise the money for them to do it. It's all about, look, a business of music is how do you put food on the table? That's the bottom line. It's, following the dream is great, but you have to be realistic about it. So I found ways around uh, having to do that. I mean, playing Liszt and Grieg and Beethoven and Mozart. I've recorded all the Mozart sonatas. I've done Bach. I've done Christmas. I've done whatever. It's not enough.
Hmm.
It's not, unless you could get away with having a big career playing the standard works and a couple of new pieces. It's a tough world today. You really need to reinvent the wheel. It's a different world. So there's too many people that have done that already. It's like, okay, next.
Hmm.
So I found a way to do that, and I've enjoyed it. Getting a lot of new pieces out there. It's fun. It's a challenge. I like the challenge, but I also like learning new music. It makes me a better musician. I think. I hope.
If people want to hear your music and get connected with you, how can they find you?
Oh, I have a website, jeffreybiegel.com, and you go to YouTube, you can hear lots of things. YouTube is notorious for having all your recordings there for free. But okay, as long as it's there, I mean, I want it to be enjoyed for the years when I won't be around. You always said you get to a certain point, I'll be 64. You get to a point, you're like, okay, what is the legacy? What are they going to? What am I leaving here? What are they going to hear? Are they going to remember me? Charles Schultz said that to his son Craig about Peanuts. He did Charlie Brown. He says, "Are they going to remember me?" Can you imagine? He asked his son, "Are they going to remember me?" Oh my gosh! Uh, but you do start to think that way when you get older. You want to, for all the work you've done, you just. I hope it was for a good reason. Hope it helps future generations. But you can't live your life worrying about that. It just happens if it
Right.
happens. So that's
Well, the
basically.
way I like to end the podcast with my guest is I do a 1 minute rapid fire challenge of questions. I feel this is so fun because, you were the teacher and now I feel like I'm the teacher testing a student on my
Go for it.
podcast here.
Well,
So,
what kids are nurtured by parents, and then when parents get much older, they become the children, and the kids are helping them.
oh,
It's
what
true.
did what's the office reference? Oh, how the turntables were.
Yeah, I mean,
He totally
hey,
messes that up, but
but it's true, and that's the cycle of life.
it is
I
the
think it's
cycle of
okay.
life. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's try this out.
Okay. We'll see how many you can answer quickly. Okay, so here's my timer. Ready? Okay, 1 minute, and I'm gonna just rattle some off and we'll just see how you do, okay? What's your favorite concerto to perform?
Prokofiev 3.
A composer you think is underrated.
Hmm. George Gershwin.
What's a go-to warm-up piece at the piano?
Schumann Toccata.
Best concert hall you've played in.
Carnegie Hall.
Favorite
For many
food
reasons.
after a recital.
Dessert.
Um, what's your favorite era of music?
Favorite era?
Hmm.
19th century.
What's one piece you haven't performed yet but dream of?
Brahms won.
Really? Oh, okay. Um,
Yeah,
what's one word to describe Bach?
genius.
Genius. And that is 1 minute. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. That's fun. It's always interesting to see what
Yeah,
the answers are going
it
to
is.
be.
It is interesting because you have to think. You really the first thing. It's like when you do the SATs, which is the right answer. Don't go back and change it.
Don't
Follow your
overthink it.
gut.
Follow
No,
your
don't
gut.
overthink it. I
Hmm.
think Gershwin is underestimated because everybody always felt like, well, it's not Rachmaninoff and Chopin, but well, no. And people used to stick their noses up at Gershwin. It's like, well, if you play, somebody once said to me, well, if you play Rhapsody in Blue with that orchestra, they'll never have you back to play a major concerto. Actually, my answer to that was, I already played Beethoven Third Concerto with them, so it's okay. So I went the other way. Never limit yourself. That's the advice to students. Today, it's an open book. You could play a lot of repertoire of different styles, and people won't kill you.
Huh.
Years ago when I studied, it's like, if you play that, you can't play that. It's really strange stereotypes. I think we've outgrown them,
I think we
hopefully.
are. I think people are more open
Hmm.
to kind of that cross between genres, and we're creating our new path forward.
I think so. I
Hmm.
think so. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey Biegel, it has been such a joy to catch up with you. Um,
Yeah.
your artistry, mentorship, and commitment to innovating new classical works, it's inspiring, and it shapes the lives of musicians and audiences. And I'm excited to continue to follow your journey. And I hope
Thank you.
many people get to, hear your music and then see your music live with all the concerts that you have planned for the coming years. I think it's really
Well,
exciting.
when does this come out? And I'll add to that if you tell me when this is released.
This podcast, this will come out in May. They'll all start coming out in May.
Great. Well, in May, I know for sure I'm playing in South Bend Symphony like the third week. We're
Okay.
doing the Boyer Rhapsody and Adolphus Hailstork's Concerto Number 3 that he wrote for me. It's a great pair.
Fantastic.
And then in the summer, if people happen to be in Pennsylvania or Corning, New York, I'm doing the Jimmy Webb Nocturne for Piano and Orchestra, another great songwriter, in the Pennsylvania part of the Endless Mountain Music Festival with Stephen Gunzenhauser conducting. And then in the Corning side, the next day in the middle of July, I'm doing the Neil Sedaka Manhattan Intermezzo. Neil was a pupil of Adele Marcus, by the way, and the world premiere of Melissa Manchester's Awake for piano and orchestra. Great songwriter, Melissa Manchester, daughter of principal bassoonist of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. That's where the classics.
Fantastic.
So definitely come and say hello. Melissa will be there. She'll be at the concert.
Oh, that's so exciting. We'll definitely direct people towards those performances. So, Jeffrey Biegel, thank you for being on the Sheckler Spotlight. We appreciate you.
And I appreciate you, and I thank you for inviting me to be on here, truly.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sheckler Spotlight with your host, Harrison Sheckler. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the show with a friend. New conversations drop regularly, so stay tuned. And thanks again for listening and being a part of the journey. Follow Harrison Sheckler on social media and visit harrisonsheckler.com to learn more.